Welcome back, guys, to what is effectively the second video in the How to Shoot a Handgun Better series. Today, we are going to be going over fundamentals of actual trigger control, both on a striker-fired pistol, which most people these days are running, as well as a DASA pistol, in this case, my P30SK. Give me a run through both of those for you guys and just show you some fundamentals and some issues that I've seen with especially new shooters coming out on the range, and once corrected, really some advantages and the improvements that can be made off of basically correcting just these couple little things. So first off, to jump in here, we are going to make sure that we are obviously unloaded. You can see I have no magazine here in the pistol and the chamber is clear. And for the sake of this, I'm just gonna dry fire to show you that. And I'm gonna try to keep the pistol as well in frame here as I can. I'm hoping this is actually focusing, but we'll see what we can do. So the first mistake, and this is kind of what I want to jump into, and I see a lot of people do when they're shooting a pistol. So again, we are clear. The first mistake I see people do is they'll be up, they'll be ready to shoot. I'm going to back up so we get this in frame. They'll be up, they'll be ready to shoot. And the first thing they'll do, they'll get kind of close to on target, to have the finger up here, and they'll just go wham. And they just yank the trigger for all dear life. And hopefully I can get a GoPro shot of this, but you yank the trigger and the gun just moves, goodness knows wherever, and they're gonna miss the shot. And sometimes this is flinch or recoil anticipation. Sometimes they're just not really used to how to run their trigger, so they just kind of get on it and go wham, and you're pulling the trigger, right? Well, no. And this is the part where it comes down to knowing your gun specifically when you start off, and then really learning just a bunch of different guns in the industry, kind of what triggers feel like, to be able to run them well. I have, of course, several years of practice on this, so I can pick up most pistols on the market, learn the trigger within like 1 or 2 shots, and be able to shoot it well. Once you understand the fundamental, it makes it a lot easier. So the first thing you want to understand on most striker-fired pistols, and there are some exceptions to this, but by and large, this is how they are. And you should still be able to see the trigger if I come on here. Yep. It's not quite as clear, but you can still see it. So the first thing you want to understand is when you come on that trigger, that you have what's called take up, a wall, and then a break. In the case of, like I said, most striker-fired pistols. So your take up is going to look like this. You come on the trigger. In this case, this one has a little bit of a tab safety that you deactivate on this VP9. There'll be a little bit of slack. I think you can see that right in there. And then the gun hits what is known as the wall. So at this point, the trigger weight increases, and as you pull steadily through this, you get the click. And that's where it actually drops the striker and would fire the round. So if you understand your striker fired pistol and you're shooting it fast, you can come up, come onto the wall, and then break through the wall. If you're shooting very quickly and you do end up slapping the trigger, you need a very good master grip on this pistol. If you haven't seen last week's video, check that out, to kind of correct for a little bit of sloppy trigger control. But ultimately, if you're shooting for accuracy, you need to be good on that trigger. So like I said, this one comes up, and nice click. Again, we have take up there, we hit the wall, and then nice break through the wall. Glocks especially have a little bit more of a kind of roll through trigger, and we'll get into that a little bit more on the DASA side of things. The trigger is a little bit more, it's not as defined of a wall. You more kind of just pull through it and then you get a nice click. It's kind of like a rolling break, again, like a DASA pistol. We'll get into that a little bit more when we break out the P30SK. But let's show you what this looks like in live fire. I'll just put off a couple shots here and show you guys what it looks like. I've got, I think, 10 rounds here. We'll walk you guys through this, and you can charge from the front or the back. Just make sure if you go from the front that you're not ahead of the muzzle. I personally prefer to do that. So hopefully got the trigger nice and in frame here. And again, we're going to come onto the trigger, take up, wall, break. The reset comes out. I got a little bit of a click. I'm back onto the wall, break. Reset. The take up is taken up there. I'm back onto the wall, break. Now if I'm going to do this fast, hopefully you guys can see this. As I'm coming on to that trigger, like I just let off in the last shot, I'm out to maybe here, maybe about here. I get that take up, I'm back to the wall, and I snap through. You know your trigger, so you know when it's going to break, you know how much travel you have, and that enables you to both run it more accurately and faster. So, keep this mag out here. We are clear. I'll toss that magazine over to the side. And that is the big fundamental to understand when you're shooting a semi-auto pistol. Understand in your specific trigger, and again, we are clear, understand in your trigger where your take-up is, and hopefully be able to see this right here. That's take-up. I'm hitting the wall, it's a little bit more pressure, and then it snaps through. Here we go. Reset, take-up, we hit the wall, and break through it. Now, as you're coming up to actually shoot, the whole thing of, oh, you shouldn't know when the gun's gonna go off. Yeah, baloney. You better control when that gun's gonna go off, at least in my opinion. Again, I'm not a bullseye shooter. I shoot occasionally fast, but more often than not, I want to get hits exactly where I want the hits. So take that for what it's worth. We're gonna swap over to the P30SK next, and I'm gonna show you how to run a double single action trigger, which is a whole nother animal. Stay with me. Alrighty guys, so as far as double action, single action trigger goes, the important thing is you're going to have to, at least if you're using it for practical use, or if you're competing with it in one of the sports that require you start hammer down, you're going to have to understand that you have two separate trigger pulls. Now, for this demonstration, I'm going to be using a empty magazine here just to kind of fill out the grip, because this is a little bit more of a shorty grip. And we are completely clear, and I think you'll be able to see this a little better from the GoPro shot. So, we are completely clear, locked open, and empty magazine in. So, not only is this two trigger pulls, but this one also runs a manual safety on the side, which is in a great position, and if you're used to running anything like a 1911, just sweeping that off is quite easy. Now, when most people pick up a double action, single action pistol for the first time, what they more often than not do is they just come on this trigger, and I'm going to come up on target here to try to demonstrate. They come on this trigger and they just go yank. And of course, this is between a 12 and 13 pound trigger on this. It's very similar to like a revolver trigger, and it's heavy. Now, when you try to yank that, if you're not used to that trigger, of course, I'm used to it, so it's not as big of an issue. But you're most likely going to just yank the whole gun off, and your first shot's going to go wide. Larry Vickers does an excellent video on this, and if I think about it, I'll try to put it up in like the pin card or in the description or something, so you guys can watch that as well. But to think about a double action trigger is not like a striker fired trigger where you just bring it to the wall and you break it. A double action trigger is more akin to a roll or a nice gentle pull through than it is a yank. So I'll try to do this one-handed so you guys can see this a little bit better here. Try to get the angle right. I'm on the trigger, and instead of just going yank, when you see how much it moves, you come on the trigger and you roll through it. Like that. You start at the beginning and you commit to it and you just roll through that trigger. And especially with two hands, that's actually nice and smooth. And it's quite accurate, and not only that, but it's also safe. And there is, if you're any kind of competent shooter, absolutely zero chance that you're going to accidentally be like, oh, stressful situation, yoink, and just send a shot into something you don't want to. So that's your double action trigger. And when you're starting out or carrying this, say I was getting ready to load, pretend I actually had ammunition in this magazine. I'm going to hold down my slide lock so that it goes forward. I chambered around. I'm getting ready to carry for the day. I'm not going to carry it single action, even if the safety was off, because I simply have a short click and it fires. So say I just charged the pistol for the day. I'm ready to go. I'm going to hit this decocker on the back of the frame here. And what that does is it lowers the hammer to the double action mode. Basically takes the energy out of the hammer spring to where it now has to be re-input by the trigger, or if you were to manually cock it. I highly recommend against manually cocking it. Don't do that. That first double action pull is meant to actually be safe, and that is actually the whole reason that I carry a hammer fired pistol. That, especially in holstering, we'll get into that in a little bit. So for a double action pistol, when you're getting ready to shoot one, make sure I'm in frame here. You come up, say I was going to come up and put a couple rounds in that target. I come up, my first shot is that nice roll through in double action, at which point the slide would cycle. I have now a short reset on the trigger. You see, I'm only out to there, whereas before I was like basically out to here. And then I get a nice short click. And right in there, see, that's definitely a lot shorter. Now, the advantage of this is after that first shot, you have very quick and very accurate follow-up shots, but you have to learn two triggers. And you have to understand that the first trigger pull is that roll. You come on it, it's that nice sweep through. Let me do it one hand so you can actually see it. That nice roll through on the trigger. And your subsequent shots are going to be short single action clicks. like so. Now let me load up some live ammo and show you what this looks like. Alrighty, going hot here. This is basically the same routine I would use as if I was going to actually carry this for the day. So obviously I'm not using FMJs to carry, but for range use. So I'm gonna load in, and the nice thing on the P30SK is I can use the same magazines as my VP9. So magazine compatibility. Mag in, I'm gonna charge it. You can see there, I've got around, I think you can see that on camera. Got around in the chamber. Now, I'm not gonna carry it hammer back, although you could technically with a safety model, you could carry it cocked and locked. I still like to drop the hammer, and I like to just put my thumb on it, ease it down. Now, when I get ready to fire that first shot, we're gonna come up on target. And again, I'm gonna use two hands here. I'm hoping you can see the trigger pass. I'm gonna kind of hold my hand a little bit to the rear so you can try to see it. I'm on that trigger right there. And again, nice roll through. And then shorter reset. And I have a much shorter pull. Now, say I decide to stop shooting and I want to holster this, at least in my case, the one that has safety, I put safety on. I dropped the hammer, and now you saw the trigger went back to its forwardmost position. Again, let's repeat that again. Actually, I'm going to do that single-handed so you can see that a little better. I come up, safety off, and I like to put my thumb on the safety. Helps control recoil a little bit. Try to stay in frame here. There we go. Right, now I'm not staging it like that. I come on the trigger, I roll through the trigger, like so. I let it reset, then I have single action shots. Say I want to stop shooting for a little bit, safety on, hit the decocker, that drops my hammer. I'm now safe to go back into the holster. Double to single action guns, especially well-made ones like HKs, I know the classic SIGs, 220s, 226s, 229s, 227s, have really good double action, single action triggers on them as well. Those are really the popular ones that have kind of stayed around, but if you put in the work to practice them, they are a very versatile trigger. Like I said, they're extremely safe because you don't have the accidental chance of just, oh, I'm pulling my trigger, it's going to fire. That's, like I said, a 12, 13 pound trigger. So it's a little bit heavier. And you have the added safety of that double action to single action transition. You just got to learn it. So that is a double to single action trigger transition for you guys, as well as a striker fired trigger. Learn both of them. They're going to be very beneficial for you for actually getting out to the range, shooting a bunch of different pistols. Like I said, Glocks have a trigger that, having trained on DASA pistols, I can shoot a Glock fairly well because the trigger has a little bit more travel to it. Something like the Car series of pistols, they also have a rolling like double action trigger, and I can shoot them both fairly well. So take that for what it's worth. Hope this video was helpful for you guys. As always, thanks for watching us here on the Reloading Craft channel. If you have any more video suggestions or ideas for the basically how to start shooting handgun better series, I'm definitely not an expert, but I have taught quite a few people over the years, and I'd be happy to address some videos or to even get into some stuff and learn more on my own as well and be able to pass that knowledge on to you guys. If you haven't already, be sure to check me out over in Utreon. I have unrestricted content over there, and all my YouTube content gets backed up over there. Thanks as always for watching us here on the Reloading Craft channel. If you enjoyed the video and you want to donate to the channel or anything, I do have YouTube Super Thanks set up, so you can always drop that in the just underneath this video here. Thanks as always for watching. Stay safe out there. We'll catch you guys later. Out on the range, it's okay to have some fun. I got 2 more shots. Let's set up some more clays. Also, nice grip there on the head. There we go, 2 shots. And the other tip, practice working with gloves, especially if you're in a colder climate. Ready? It's always a good range day.